All right. So if you watched my Mora ice auger, hand auger review, you heard me mention that I drill a series of holes to find fish. Now, trout can be very closely connected to structure, especially like lake trout, brown trout. They can really hold to ledges, points, all sorts of structure. I have found that rainbow trout, like I'm targeting today, are not so closely associated with structure. They'll feed up in the mid-water column, top portion of the water column, kind of all over, and don't seem to just be connected to structure. I think that is because they are not as significant when it comes to ambush hunting. They feed on a variety of, aquatic insects, plankton, and, small shrimp, fish, you name it. But a pretty diverse diet. So with that, I think they just go where the food is. So a few points for finding fish when you're ice fishing. First, weed beds. Early season, the weed beds are still very active and alive with aquatic life. As the season moves on and the temperatures are colder, the ice is thicker, less sun gets through, those weed beds become less productive. So in the early season, as soon as the ice is on, I love to target the edge of thick weed beds or fishing directly above the weed bed near the deeper edge. It's been very productive for me. The other location that I go is actually there's generally an inner or a more shallow edge. Oftentimes, I find that I catch the bigger fish in that shallower water. And as I move deeper, I'm catching those smaller planters, things like that. Now, I don't know if this is because the big fish are running those small fish off as they maximize on that food source, or if they're targeting minnows and things like that, like a larger fish would, and the smaller fish are simply targeting a different food source. No idea. But I do know that is pretty consistent for me over the many years that I've been ice fishing. I often find that people start too deep, especially early season. I will be fishing in, 5 to 15 feet of water, sometimes, even a little less than 5 feet of water, and folks will be out in 20, 30, 40 feet of water not catching fish. Now, another point, as the weed beds lose productivity, I tend to do better in those deeper holes. Now, one thing that can be, very productive is varying your depth. So oftentimes we can get stuck in a bit of a rut where we've been catching fish deep, so we're fishing down near the bottom. I have a good example this year. I was fishing with a friend for the 2 weeks prior. We'd been pulling fish right off the bottom in big numbers and pretty large fish in shallower water. And a friend of mine that I was fishing with, the fishing wasn't real hot. We were catching a few, but he started varying his depth. I was stuck in my ways and I was fishing near the bottom. He started pulling fish off right under the ice. And we were fishing in a variety of depth, 10 to 20 feet of water, even 25 feet of water. But the vast majority of those fish were being caught 3 to 4 feet under the ice. So do not get stuck in a rut and think that those fish are going to be in the exact same depth trip to trip, and even during the same day. If the bite turns off down deep, start fishing high. If the bite starts high, move low. It really pays to do that. Now, one thing that I do when I'm jigging, so these stationary rods, I have this close one that's in shallower water. I have it right down on the bottom or near the bottom, but any fish that's in this area is going to see that. It's very shallow. That's only in about 6 feet of water. The rod that's further out, that's in 15 to 20 feet of water. I haven't stuck the fish finder in there to see exactly, but just knowing from previous trips. And I have that one just under the ice. It's one of my dual rigs. If you haven't seen that video, I utilize a dodger and fish 2 types of bait, and it is probably my best trick when it comes to ice fishing. So I would suggest looking up that video if you're just starting out and you're looking for some tips and tricks on ice fishing. That one has a sinking bait on one, a fake gulp corn, and power bait on the other. So from that dodger, I have the power bait floating up. It's probably only 2 feet below the ice. And then that other sinking bait is maybe 3 to 4 feet below the ice. So these are just a few tips that I have. for finding fish when you're ice fishing. And the last thing that I'll say to end this video is change it up, be flexible. It's often the worst thing that I do is getting stuck in a rut. I get convinced that my method that I used on the last trip or the previous season is going to be the most effective. And I often find that I'll do really well with a certain technique, and I'll keep using that technique even though it's slowed down. And oftentimes somebody else that I'm with, or a single rod that I change, or a single depth change, that's what triggers and starts catching more fish. So make lots of moves. Don't be afraid to drill more holes. That's about what I'm going to do. I'm going to drill another set of 5, going out even deeper, and I'm going to try to catch a bunch of fish. Thanks everybody. If you like these videos, please like and subscribe, and any comments in the bottom, let me know if there's any questions you have or something you'd like to see in the future. Thank you.